And then I can go first if you want.
Do what?
I said I can go first if you would like.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Hold on, let me get this together. Okay. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Hi, how are you today, Chris?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm glad to hear that you're doing well. So prior to our meeting today, I sent you the Beck's depression inventory and the anxiety inventory. Did you have a chance to take a look at those and take those inventories?
Yes, I had time to do the depression one.
Okay. Did you have any like trouble doing it? Any problems while taking it?
No, it was fairly easy. I did have to copy and paste it into another link, which took me a second, but I did end up figuring it out. So,
Okay, good. I'm glad that you didn't have any issues when taking that. So I'll just go over kind of what the depression inventory is and kind of why I thought it would be a good assessment tool. So it is a valid and reliable test that we can use. Now, we don't use it to diagnose. So whatever score you were to get on this, I would not use to diagnose you with depression. These are just like an additional assessment for us to take to help us towards what we would diagnose you with. So it's kind of just a guide for us clinicians to use rather than saying, oh, you got this high score. This means that you have this. But it would say, hey, like his score is, higher or lower. Maybe this is something we should look at. Maybe it's something that really we shouldn't spend much time on because if you're scoring, a 0 or a 1 and it's just, normal day to day, then that's not something as a clinician that would flag me to stop and say, hey, like, let's spend time on this. Let's dive a little deeper and figure out, what's going on here. So I mentioned this is reliable. And so if you answered the questions honestly, the score that you got, as you could see that it was self-reported, you can, get your own score, add it up on your own. The score that you got should be pretty similar to what you would be feeling. So if you scored a 21 or you scored a 1, then we would be able to see kind of the responses that you have. And as you did notice, there are 21 questions on it, and they're, similar to multiple choice. You have 0 through 3. So you're not feeling it, or, it's taking a toll on you for sure. So what was your score after taking the inventory?
I scored a 10.
Okay.
You need to know what I scored in each question.
Um, I do not need to know, but if there is a question that you want to go over, or maybe one that you felt like you didn't understand as much, we can definitely take the time to go over that. Did any of the ones like really stick out to you, make you feel like you should look at that or?
No, I understood them all.
Okay, cool. So based on your score, as you can see at the bottom, so the depression inventory has the scoring at the bottom. And these are, 0 to 1 to 10, 11 to 16, and it goes on and so forth.
What was the
Um,
rest of the scale? Because I can't see it now that I'm on
okay.
here with you.
No, you're totally
Oh,
fine.
you may not be able to either, huh?
No, I can see it. Yeah, I have it. So 0 to 1, or 1 to 10, I should say, which shouldn't say 0. 1 to 10 is these ups and downs are considered normal. 11 to 16 are mild mood disturbance. 17 to 20 are borderline clinical depression. 21 to 30 are moderate depression. 31 to 40 is severe depression. And over 40 is extreme. So if you scored over 40, this is definitely something that we would need to spend more time on, dive a little bit more in, and kind of figure out what's going on in that category. But you mentioned you scored a 10, which is obviously the first category, which is these ups and downs are considered normal. So these are just things, day to day, like you can experience them on your own. Something that, these aren't something that you're experiencing every single day, consistent, persistent for 2 weeks for me to make you feel like you would 100% have depression. I need to look into this, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does. I was actually thinking 10. Oh my God, that's almost half. And I didn't understand it.
Yeah, so you can score over 40. So 10 is actually fairly low. It's on the lower end. And honestly, it's a good range to be in, between 1 and 10, because if it was 1, we could be like, okay, then you're not experiencing almost any of these things. And 10, it happens. There's things like, for example, question 20 talks about health. So you could have answered a 1 on question 20, which is, I'm worried about my physical problems like aches, pains, upset stomach, or constipation. However, you could be experiencing those symptoms due to something else. It could be not even related to depression. So that's something that's very important that we look at, especially if you were to have, maybe a lower end and you're like, this is the only one that I found. Well, then we could look at that and base it on other things. So, we can see aches and pains and upset stomach and other disorders like anxiety, panic disorder, adjustment disorder. There's several things that we could experience that. So, it would be normal for you to have answered something similar to that if you were experiencing other problems.
Okay, that makes sense.
Do you feel like this was like an accurate representation of, like, do you feel like this is like, okay.
I don't know. Well, like I said, I felt like, oh man, that's a high score, 10. But now that I found out that, these ups and downs are normal, I kind of disagree with that. I don't know. Life's hard,
Yeah.
and sometimes I feel sorry about myself, and I don't know. I don't know. Maybe it's right.
Yeah. Well, that's why it's a great assessment tool for us to look at. And even at times, if there was a specific question that you scored on that you were like, hey, I scored a 2 on this, but everything else was pretty much a 0 or, a 1, we can always take a look at that. And, for example, 5 is talk about guilt. We can experience guilt in many different things. We can experience guilt in PTSD. We can experience guilt in adjustment disorder. So there's different aspects of this depression inventory that you could look at and, say, well, I scored a 2 on this, so it could mean something. However, a 10 is fairly low when you can score over 40, but it's just the questions that you based it on. So, for example, something I would be concerned about is there is a question on here that is related to suicide. And if you were to have mentioned that you would like to kill yourself, or you have thoughts of that, suicidal ideation is something that I would take very seriously, and it's something that I would want to look into. So I would ask you further questions about that at least, because I think that, one, that's my legal obligation and my ethical obligation to make sure that you are okay and you're not a harm to yourself or anybody else. So if that was a question, that specifically you answered strongly to, that is something that I would want to know going forward, so that we know that, hey, this is something we're looking at and it could be pressing. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is there anything else thoughts maybe, or questions that you had in regard to this, or anything else that you want to bring up?
No. I enjoyed the experience.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you for taking the inventory. I appreciate it. As I said, we'll probably use this and maybe reflect on it going back, just to kind of see what you scored here and there. And if there's anything, I'll take a look at it. I'll have you send it to me, and I'll take a look at it. And if there's anything that I felt maybe we should dive a little bit more into, for example, number 9, which was, suicidal ideation question, then we'll circle back to it another day.
Okay.
All righty. Well, that is all I have for you. Thank you for joining me today, Chris.
You're welcome. Cut. That's good, man. You're smart. You know a lot of different diagnoses.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I studied it in college because I was supposed to go into forensics, and so I took deviance and psychopathology in undergrad, and I took it again here. So it was like same thing, but it was a little different. Obviously, the coursework was a little different, but.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
That was great.
Thank you.
I'm gonna have a lot to. Gotta stand up after that.
And I'm trying to think of questions I could have, but I'm like, I don't really know if I'll have questions for you.
You're like, oh, he's got good questions. I'm gonna stump him.
I know. I'm like trying to think. I'm like, what can I ask? Probably nothing.
Let's see here. I wanted to get this thing pulled up so I have it.
Yeah, I printed mine off just because it was easier for me to score it that way, but I did the same thing with the anxiety one as well. But I don't know if that one's accurate since that link wasn't working. Could be wrong.
Yeah, that was great. Let's see.
Thank you. I don't know if it was actually 5 minutes. I didn't look at the time, but
Oh, it don't matter. Mine's gonna be about 2.5. Oh my goodness. I gotta center myself now. What did you end up getting on that one assignment where you had to read the Z scores and the MMPI?
I don't know. I don't think I've looked.
Look, I ended up getting some help with it. Like, I think I had a mental breakdown during it. Like, nobody's coming over. I want to be alone.
Yeah, I don't know what I got on it.
Man, it was so rough. But I had somebody. I had a clinical friend give me some advice.
I don't even remember what workshop that was.
Yeah, it was something else. Sheesh.
She's gonna make you edit this video because she's gonna be like, please don't submit that.
Submit
Since so I was like, since it's recording, she's gonna be like, why are they talking about that?
Oh yeah, I'm just gonna center myself. All right, let's see here. I got
Okay.
pulled up. All right, 3, 2, 1. Hi, Marissa. How are you today?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm fine. I am doing fine, enjoying the day out, and now I'm here with you and gonna see how you're doing today. The last session, I sent you home with the Beck depression and anxiety inventory. How'd them tests work out for you?
The depression inventory was fine. I couldn't get the anxiety link to work, but I found something similar online. So, and it's the same. I mean, it's still 21 items. So, I'm really hoping that it's similar to what you were administering to me because I'm not really sure, but I didn't have really any problem taking them. I think they were pretty self-explanatory, and the anxiety inventory, at least, kind of walked me through it. It said like these are common symptoms of anxiety. So yeah, they were pretty straightforward.
Okay, all right. Well, would you like to expound a little bit on the depression one since that was the one that you could get open?
Yeah, that's fine. We can go over that one.
Okay. First off, how'd you like it?
I liked it a lot. I feel like it was easier to just circle some of the questions rather than I feel like in the past I've had previous therapists just ask me a bunch of questions. So I felt like this was almost quicker for me to do to kind of show, and it was on my own pace. So I felt like it was easier.
Yeah, it took the pressure off getting to do it on your own, huh?
Yeah, and I think that it's kind of hard. Some of these questions I had to like think about how I really feel. And sometimes when I feel like I'm one-on-one in an interview, like maybe I don't really have the opportunity to stop and think about it in my tracks. So I really have to just like answer right away. So, or I feel pressured to answer it right away. So, or some things I'm just too nervous to say and I don't want to, let my clinician know that. So sometimes I just keep it to myself. But at least with this, I was able to kind of circle and think about it.
Okay. All right. Well, what was some of the questions that stood out the most to you?
Um,
You don't have to tell me the exact one if you don't want, just maybe what they entailed.
One thing that stood out to me the most was like one of the questions about tiredness. Like I noticed originally when I first started coming here, I was tired all the time. But this says like it just worded weird. It says like I get tired from doing almost anything, but that makes me think that like I get like tired like from doing it. Like if I go put a dish in the sink, then I'm like tired from doing it. But I would say I'm more tired than I am normally. So I feel like that question could have been worded a little differently, but other than that, I also thought it was kind of cool that it talked about attractiveness. I didn't really ever think about, you know, one of the questions says like I believe that I look ugly or I feel worse than I normally do. That's actually something that's never been asked to me. So I thought that was kind of cool to have that asked in this inventory. I don't really know what role it plays in depression, maybe self-esteem, but yeah.
Okay. All right. Um, so we have a scale here, and the scale is from 1 to over 40 as
Mhm.
far as score range. And what was your score you got?
Um, if I totaled everything right, my score was 22.
22.
Hmm.
Okay, so that reads you in as moderate depression. Um,
Yes.
this was just a tool that we wanted to use because we had some ideas and assumptions that was pointing towards some depression. And it was just something that we wanted to do to get a good idea of where you stand. How do you feel about your score?
Um, I think I kind of like it. I feel like if I would have scored any lower, it probably would have thrown me a little bit of a red flag. And I don't feel like I have extreme depression. So I feel like my score is fairly like perfect of what I was expecting myself to score and based off what other, therapists I've seen have told me. So it makes sense.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Um, I'm gonna get you the other link as well, and maybe in the future we can do the anxiety one, so we can get an
Okay.
idea about that as well. Um, is there any other questions you got about it?
So would you tell like for example, if I were to based off this, is this what you would diagnose me with or would you just um use this alongside whatever you're already thinking that I potentially may have?
Well, this wouldn't be necessarily a tool for diagnosing. The DSM is for that. Um, we would have to look over criteria and amount of time to determine, your actual diagnosis. But this is just a tool, kind of like something that we can use in the assessment process to get a good idea of where you stand and where you're at. And in the future sessions, we can go through some diagnosis criteria in the DSM, and we can go from there with actually getting you a diagnosis. Does that sound good to you?
Yeah, that sounds good to me. I just didn't know if that was something that I was going to be leaving here today knowing, or if it was something that maybe we'll look at over time. So that's why I thought I would ask.
Okay. Yeah, we can get that worked out for you.
Okay, that works for me.
All right. I appreciate your time today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right.
Let's see
Bam.
if you want to stop the